Across the stars, the Galactic Council had ruled for centuries. Their power was not in ships or weapons, but in something far more dangerous. They used the mind net, a massive psychic system that reached across thousands of worlds, connecting the thoughts of billions of beings. The moment a new species was found, the mind net was sent to them. It spread through the air and light, invisible and soft like a whisper. But once it touched a mind, that mind stopped thinking for itself. The Council called it unity. The rest of the galaxy called it slavery. On the day Earth was chosen, the mind net was sent without warning from deep space. A pulse of psychic energy shot toward the blue planet. It was beautiful in design, fast, smooth, and perfect. Everything the aliens had built was meant to control, without pain, without noise. Just a gentle closing of the mind, the same way a hand closes over a candle flame. The Council watched from orbit. They had done this 1,000 times before. Soon the humans would be part of the network, another species added to the chain. The alien technicians waited for the signs, the moment when human brains would light up on their screens, showing perfect submission and alignment. But the screen stayed dark. Minutes passed. Then hours. Something was wrong. The humans continued walking, talking, living, completely unaware that a galactic event was even happening. The mind net had landed, but it had not taken hold. The chief technician, a thin gray being with glowing fingers, tapped the controls again, boosting the signal, doubling the power. He expected to see a response, at least a flicker of resistance. Still, nothing. He called Commander Julik, the mind officer in charge. Julik stepped into the chamber, his red uniform glowing. Under the command lights, he looked at the silent screen with a deep frown. He asked if the equipment was broken. The technician shook his head. Everything was working. The signal was clean and strong. It had touched every human brain on the surface. And still there was no response. Julik had never seen this before in the history of the Council. No species had ever ignored the net, not even the violent ones, not even the smart ones. This was different. This was silence, and silence meant danger. He ordered a new test. This time they would target a single location, a small town in the middle of Earth's largest continent. A pulse shaped like a dome was sent down, covering the area in waves of mind energy from space. The aliens watched as the people below looked up, confused, not afraid, just puzzled. They rubbed their heads. Some laughed, thinking it was a weird feeling. In the air, one boy even joked that it felt like his brain got tickled. Julik's eyes narrowed. This was not how victims behaved. This was not how control began. The Council demanded an update. They had already announced Earth's submission to other systems. They had promised a new species to the market, a fresh supply of workers, thinkers, and soldiers. They wanted answers, and they wanted them fast. Julik decided he would go to Earth himself, not in disguise, not as a friend, but as an observer. He needed to see these humans with his own eyes. He needed to feel their thoughts for himself. Perhaps the equipment was missing something. Perhaps the humans were hiding some weakness. But deep in his mind, Julik was afraid that the humans were not broken, not blind, not simple, afraid that they were something far worse, immune. The idea was terrifying. The mind net had never failed. It was the Council's strongest weapon. If humans were truly immune, it meant they could not be controlled. They could not be shaped or used or silenced. It meant they were a threat, not just to the Council, but to the system itself. Back on Earth, the people continued their lives, unaware of the danger, above unaware that they had just survived an attack, that no other species had escaped, unaware that they had become the center of the galaxy's attention, not because of what they built or what they said, but because of something inside their minds, something ancient, silent, and unbreakable. As the Council began to prepare for Plan 2, Earth turned slowly under the stars, bright and blue and strange, the first planet to reject the mind net, the only world where the mind stayed free. The war for thought had not begun yet, but it was coming, and the Council now understood. This battle would not be fought with guns or ships or even words. It would be fought in silence, in shadows, in the place where thoughts are born. And for the first time the Council was afraid. This time their enemy was not a beast or a machine. This time their enemy was human. Commander Julik stood tall in the shining chamber of the landing vessel as it descended Toward Earth, his mind was full of questions, doubt, creeping through every layer of his thought. He had served the Galactic Council for 170 cycles, and had seen over 90 species fall quietly under the mind. But this was different. This was Earth, and Earth had stayed awake. He watched the planet grow larger in the viewing window, its blue oceans and green lands, glowing under sunlight, looking calm, innocent, yet he knew what was hiding down there. He knew this species had resisted something that was never meant to be resisted. As the ship touched down in the middle of a forest, Julik stepped out with 2 memory harvesters on either side. They looked like silver spiders with long legs and glowing red eyes, ready to scan every brain they found. Nearby, a small human town stood, peaceful houses, simple roads, people laughing and walking without any fear. They did not run from the ship. They did not scream. Instead, they stopped and stared. Phones came out, cameras flashed. Someone waved. Julik raised one hand, not in greeting, but in analysis. He began scanning their thoughts one by one. Weak surface thoughts flowed in: plans for dinner, feelings about work, jokes about aliens landing in the woods, but nothing deeper. No door opened, no mind allowed entry. He walked slowly into the town square, where a group of children were pointing at him, excited. One of them even ran up and asked if he was in a movie. The harvesters moved close, but again they detected nothing deeper than surface ideas, and Julik felt something unusual in the air. Not resistance, not fear, but noise, a thick, chaotic energy, like thousands of voices speaking at once, without pattern or order. The human minds were loud, not just in words, in emotion, colors, smells, memories, all crashing together like a storm. At that moment, a woman stepped forward from the crowd. She wore a white coat and had sharp eyes behind a pair of glasses. Her name was Dr. Lena Cole, a neuroscientist and director of the local research lab. She introduced herself politely, but her gaze stayed fixed on Julik, as if she could see past the robe, past the mission, past the fear. Julik tried to enter her mind directly, just a quick scan to feel her emotional layer, to search for cracks, but what he found shocked him. Her thoughts were there, but behind a wall built with intention and strength. It did not block him, it simply ignored him. She smiled slightly and said, "You're not the first to try." Julik froze. He had not spoken out loud, yet she knew he was probing. She turned and asked the people around to return home calmly, then invited Julik to her lab just outside of town. As they walked, she asked him questions he had never been asked before, about the structure of the mind net, about the psychic architecture of the council, about why they felt they had the right to change thought on a planetary level. Julik avoided answering, but she already knew. Inside the lab, she showed him something strange. A large screen with brainwave readings recorded over the past 3 days. The moment the mind net pulse hit Earth, human minds showed a spike, not a submission spike, but a defense spike. Every brain had built a pattern of resistance almost instantly, like a muscle remembering how to block a punch before the punch arrived. Julik studied the data in silence, trying to find flaws, but it was clean, too clean for an accident. Dr. Cole explained that human brains are naturally chaotic, that their thoughts jump quickly from one idea to another, making control extremely hard. But this was more than chaos. This was structure beneath the chaos, a survival code in the very roots of the human mind. Perhaps something ancient, something waiting for this exact kind of attack. She paused, then said something that made Julik feel cold for the first time in centuries. She said, "You're not the first to try this. We have stories we thought were myths, stories about sky voices trying to take our ancestors long ago. Maybe they failed and our brains never forgot." Julik looked at the symbols painted on the old cavestones behind her. Spirals, the broken eye, the hand over the forehead, all warnings from ancient humans. Perhaps they had been attacked before. Perhaps the council had come once and failed, and then covered it up, or perhaps someone else had tried, someone even older than the council. He stepped back slowly, realizing that this planet was not just immune by luck, it had been trained by history, shaped by old battles, and forced into a kind of evolution that no one had ever expected. And now the humans were not just surviving the pulse. They were examining it, learning from it, and perhaps even preparing to strike back as the sun set outside and the stars returned to the sky. Julik stood alone in the lab while Cole watched him carefully, not with hatred, not with fear, but with something far more dangerous: curiosity. He understood now that the Council had not found a new species to control. They had found a species they could not understand. And that meant the real war had not even started. Commander Julik returned to his ship in silence, his thoughts spinning faster than any calculations his mind had ever processed. He had come to Earth expecting to see confusion and fear. Instead, he found smiles and questions and walls he could not cross. The human brain was not open like others. It was not a garden to be shaped. It was a jungle, wild and alive, filled with traps, illusions and doors that never opened unless they wanted to. He needed answers, and he needed them now. The Council was already pressuring him, asking for updates, expecting progress, demanding submission, reports, but all he could give them was silence, and silence was dangerous. He ordered a new plan, more direct, more aggressive. No more testing with soft pulses or passive scans this time. He would bring humans into the core of his ship and expose them to the full force of the Council's psychic arsenal. He selected 5 individuals at random: a teacher, a soldier, a mechanic, a student, and a young child, all healthy, all mentally active. They were taken from their homes with no harm and brought aboard, treated well, given food and rest, then led into the control chamber where the mind spiral waited. The spiral was a machine built by the first mind architects. It could bend thoughts like rivers. It could erase memory, rewrite truth, break the strongest wills with a single whisper. Julik activated this spiral. Its glow filled the room. The air shimmered with energy, and soundless words flowed like wind around the humans. Waves of power moved through them, searching for purchase, looking for a way in. But the humans stood still, eyes wide, some confused, some calm, but none afraid. The spiral pushed harder. More energy, more layers, deeper cuts into the thought space. But still nothing. The teacher closed her eyes and began reciting a poem. The soldier stared straight ahead, whispering the name of his dog. The child laughed, pointing at the lights, calling them funny. The machine reached its limit, and then something impossible happened. Mechanic sat down cross-legged in the center of the floor and began humming a tune, slow and peaceful and strange. Within seconds, the lights of the spiral flickered. The pulse weakened, the energy bent backward. A sudden jolt hit the walls of the room. Alarms screamed in languages no human could hear. The spiral had received something back, a feedback wave, not from a weapon, not from technology, but from a human mind. It was not defense, it was reflection, a mirror not made of metal, but of memory. Julik ordered emergency. Shut down. The room fell silent, but the damage was done. The machine had never failed until now, and now it had been hurt by a tune, by a thought, by a refusal to break. The technician staff looked at Julik with fear. They had all felt the pulse bounce back into them, just for a second, a taste of something unfiltered, raw human mind energy, unshaped and full of wild things they could not name. Julik stared at the 5 test subjects who were now chatting with each other, like they had just left a park, not a battlefield. Dismissed the humans, returned them safely to the surface, and walked alone to the viewing deck of the ship, staring down at Earth with something new in his chest. It was not anger, not even fear. It was awe, the kind of awe you feel when you see a creature you thought was extinct still walking in the wild. He sent a message to the Council saying the experiment failed and suggesting they delay their plans. He begged them to study the humans more carefully, to approach with care, to not treat them like the others. The Council did not listen. They never did. They responded with a simple order: send more units. Prepare for full control, and if control fails, eliminate the threat. Julik lowered his head. He knew what was coming. The humans would not be studied. They would be targeted, and the war would not be silent anymore. Back on Earth, Dr. Lena Cole stood on a balcony watching the stars above. She felt the shift in the air. The moment the spiral fired, she felt it in her bones and in her dreams. She knew something had changed. The aliens would not stop. Now they would escalate. But what they did not know was that humans had never needed permission to defend themselves. Their strength was not in one mind or one machine. It was in all of them. Together, chaotic, loud, unpredictable, and ready. The failed experiment was not a failure, it was a warning, and the council had not heard it, but soon they would deep in the mountain ranges far from cities and satellites. Dr. Lena, Cole, and a small team of researchers entered a cave that had remained sealed for nearly 2,000 years. The walls were covered in ancient carvings, strange symbols drawn in patterns that matched no known language, but something about them felt familiar to her, not in meaning but in feeling. Each spiral, each handprint, each twisted line carried a weight of presence like memory. Etched into stone, she moved slowly, her flashlight tracing symbols that looked almost like neural patterns, but too wild, too fluid, too deliberate for primitive minds to have made by accident. Beside her, an old historian named Professor Thalman whispered that these shapes had always been dismissed as myth, as art, but perhaps they were neither. Perhaps they were messages, warnings, maps of the mind left behind by ancestors who had faced something terrible, something that never made it into written history. As Lena reached the deepest chamber, her light revealed the largest image, yet a figure surrounded by waves reaching toward it, some hands, some tendrils, some of pure shadow. The figure was human, arms spread wide, but inside its head was a storm, etched with 1,000 lines, all pointed outward, not inward. This was not a mind being taken. This was a mind pushing back around it. Others lay fallen, twisted, their heads cracked open, with symbols pouring out. She stared at it, frozen in realization. This was not a story, this was a record of resistance. Ancient humans had faced mind control before, and they had survived. Back at the lab, Lena uploaded the carvings into her system, running comparisons against brainwave scans from modern humans. The patterns matched in small ways, subtle but clear, as if the memories of those battles had somehow passed through generations, not in stories, not in books, but in biology. The human brain had adapted not to survive war or famine, but to survive thought invasion. It was not a glitch, it was evolution. The very structure of human thought had become a fortress, layer by layer, generation by generation, each mind building upon the resistance of the last. Meanwhile, in orbit, Commander Julik watched her movements. From his ship he had intercepted her research through hidden sensors, and what he saw disturbed him more than anything else. This immunity was not new, it was old, older than the Council, older than the mind net itself. Humans had not resisted because they were too simple, they had resisted because they had already been attacked once long ago, and had changed because of Ith. Called an emergency session with his superiors, broadcasting images of the cave, the carvings, the brain patterns, and the feedback from the failed spiral test. He told them this species is not just immune, they are prepared, they are the result of a past war won. We never recorded, maybe one we lost and forgot. The Council dismissed his warning again, calling it paranoia. They believed no records existed of such an encounter, therefore it never happened. They believed Earth was just a rare genetic case. They said increase power, expand influence, and if resistance continues, begin erasure. Julik felt sick for the first time in his life. He realized the Council feared what it could not control, and if it could not control it, would destroy. He looked at Earth and saw not a threat, but a mirror, a reminder that power is not always visible, not always loud. Sometimes power is hidden in silence, in memory and instinct, passed through blood like a quiet code that waits until it is needed. Dr. Lena continued her work, reaching out to other scientists across the globe, showing them the patterns, the scans, the cave images. Soon labs from every continent were comparing notes and finding the same results. Human thought carried old scars, psychic burns that had healed into stronger tissue and somehow passed forward in time. The entire species was not just resistant, it was tuned like a signal, like a living counter-frequency to mind control. One researcher discovered something else during a sleep study. The human brain during REM sleep emitted a strange pulse, a wave that briefly disrupted low-level telepathic fields across nearby devices. It was unintentional, it was biological, it was human. Lena stared at the data and said, maybe we do more than resist. Maybe we interfere. Maybe our minds create noise that clouds the mind net. Maybe we are walking jammers without even knowing it. Julik read that report and knew then that the Council would never allow Earth to remain free. The risk was too great. A species that could not be controlled was a danger. A species that might disrupt control across other worlds was worse, but a species that might teach others how to resist was the greatest threat of all. And yet as he stared at the planet spinning gently in space, glowing under its moon, he also knew one thing clearly: this planet would not fall like the others. This species would not break like the others, and when the war came, and it would come, the Council would learn the cost of underestimating a mind that refuses to kneel. The moment the findings became public, everything changed on Earth. Governments who once fought each other now sat together in silent rooms, reading reports that made their blood run cold. Leaders of science, military and medicine gathered behind locked doors, while screens showed brain scans side by side with alien frequencies. Lena Cole stood in the center of it all, explaining that humans had always been different, not just in body, not just in culture, but in mind. A mind shaped by something long forgotten. A war of thought not recorded in history books, but carved into the core of human evolution. She told them the truth, that they had already survived once, and now they were being tested again. The data could no longer be denied across the globe. Machines flickered whenever psychic pulses past satellites lost signal near large cities. Sensors picked up background noise coming from human dreams itself. Earth was not just resistant, it was louder than any other world in the known galaxy. The mind net had touched it and recoiled like a hand from flame. Now the Council was moving again. Reports of alien ships entering deep space, increased strange signals, intercepted near the moon, voices that were not voices, commands wrapped in silence, ships that had no heat, no light, but pulsed with something else, something that made birds fall from the sky, and radios scream with static. Lena met with a man named Rick Anders, a former military engineer, now a systems hacker, who had once brought down an entire satellite grid with only a backpack and a coffee machine. He read her files without blinking, then smiled and said, "If they're trying to control the mind, then we fight in the mind." He began working with a team of technopaths, underground coders and frequency experts. They built machines that could detect and block psychic attempts. They used ancient carvings and modern tech, mixing tribal patterns with alien metal signals, with symbols, memory with code. First Mind Shield was born in a bunker under Iceland. It looked like a dome of spinning crystal, powered by sound waves generated from brain scans of infants because their minds were pure, untrained, wild. The shield pulsed outward, and when the next alien pulse hit Earth, it bounced back again. But this time something changed. A small satellite near Jupiter picked up a delay, a ripple that bent back toward the source, and for a second, one of the Council's outer ships lost contact and drifted into the Voidulek. Watched from his ship in orbit as human cities lit up with new towers, machines made of steel, and thought the Council had moved from observation to invasion, and humans had moved from resistance to counterattack. Not with weapons, but with frequency, with will. They sent messages to nearby enslaved systems, recordings of their own brain scans mixed with the ancient patterns encoded into sound and light. Soon reports came from other planets. Creatures once bent in submission were standing up, their thoughts no longer quiet, their chains shaking under the storm of something new. One of the first species to break free were the Phylaxi. Their minds had been controlled for 6 generations, their memories shaped by the Council, but when they received the human signal, something inside them cracked open like ice under fire. They called Earth the planet of thunder minds. They said the noise of human thought reminded them of stars being born. They contacted Earth through hidden channels, warning that the Council had sent their psychic elite to end the threat once and for all. Julik listened to the warnings and made his choice. He sent his final report to the Council, then turned off his uplink. He took his ship out of orbit and landed on Earth. Not as a commander, but as a defector. He told Lena they were coming not to control, but to erase, and she simply nodded and said, "Then we better make more noise together." They began working on the next phase, not just shielding minds, but amplifying them, teaching people how to focus, how to resist, how to fight inside their own heads. Children learned to think in patterns that disrupted signals. Artists painted songs, scientists built towers of thought. Earth was becoming a beacon, and the galaxy had started to notice. The resistance was no longer a secret. It was now a storm, and for the first time in the Council's long rule, the question was not how to win. The question was what happens when your greatest weapon becomes useless against minds that remember. How to fight back. The Council's psychic armada appeared above Earth, like a silent storm. Ships, dark and gleaming, hovered in the sky, their hulls humming with raw mind energy. They had come to finish what the mind net began, and they carried their deadliest weapon, yet the oblivion pulse, a wave of thought so pure and strong. It erased free will in a single breath. Humans around the globe felt the air shimmer then roar as the pulse was unleashed, but nothing changed, not fear, not obedience. Instead, every city erupted with waves of resistance, towers built by Lena Cole and Rick Anders activated at once, sending jamming signals into the storm. The mind shields bloomed like flowers of light, each one driven by human brain patterns and ancient cave symbols woven together in code. The oblivion pulse struck them, and fractured, bouncing back against the ships above, shaking their sensors and warping their psychic arrays near Tokyo. Thousands of people held hands and sang a simple melody taught by artists and scientists. The song was a living frequency that cut through control like a blade, doing more than blocking the pulse. It rebounded, it turned minds in space into mirrors, and those mirrors fractured the Council's command networks on Titan. A mining colony lost its connection and slipped into silence. Its masters cut off from orders, they drifted into neutral orbit. The enslaved Zenori on Mars felt the storm, and for the first time in centuries, their thoughts broke free. Their voices rose up in unison, calling out, "Earth is our beacon." They flooded transmissions back to the SHIELD network, and Lena routed them into a global feed, showing every human what freedom sounded like on the bridge of his shattered flagship. Admiral Zari watched in disbelief as the pulse reversed and stabbed his own crew with their deepest fears and doubts. He ordered retreat, but the humans did not stop there. They reprogrammed the jammers to amplify each mind into a chorus of willpower. Every thought became a note, every heartbeat a drum, and the Council's fleet was blasted by a symphony of pure defiance. Commander Julik felt the change in his soul, watching his former allies break ranks. He landed his ship in the Nevada desert and joined Lena under the banner of resistance. Together, they planned the next move, not with bombs or bullets, but with mind waves and unity. The battle for thought had begun in earnest, and the Council would soon learn that a mind trained by history and honed by courage was a weapon no empire could contain. The Whisperer drifted through the twisted wreckage of the Council's fleet above Earth, with a presence so deep it seemed to fill the void of space itself. It had been summoned as the final hammer to crush free will, but it arrived to find its quarry had become a wall of living thought. It glided past shattered ships and silent drones, reaching through the planet's thin veil of atmosphere, where waves of its power spilled out across fields, cities, forests, and seas. Yet every human it touched simply felt a stirring in their blood, a spark of defiance born from ancient echoes of cave battles and whispered legends in New York. Pedestrians paused with slight smiles, as if greeting an old friend, and Mumbai shopkeepers felt a sudden calm surge through their minds and broke into laughter. And Cape Town fishermen on the docks hummed a tune that rippled through the SHIELD network and cracked the Whisperer's focus. In the Arctic Research Station's instruments recorded pulses they called the human echo, a resonance so pure it sang back the storm. And in the Amazon tribes, with centuries of cave symbols joined their chants into one living melody that wrapped the planet in a cloak of noise. Like armor, the Whisperer recoiled as farms and villages turned the very air into shields, and in villages across Africa, elders and children danced in patterns taught by Rick Anders and Lena Cole, weaving ancient spirals into modern code. Each step designed to scatter the alien tendrils of control. It recoiled again like a beast wounded in pride. It tried to slither back into the darkness, but the humans had not only built walls, they had forged spears of story and song, and they now hurled those spears across the sky at the ghost of mind control. Above them, ships toppled out of orbit, like broken puppets, and drifted into cold space. One by one, the Council's nodes fell silent. Commander Julik watched from his damaged cruiser with tears of relief and sorrow. He broadcast a final message of surrender, then shut down his uplink, stepped onto Earth, and knelt before Lena and Rick, pledging to guard the living fortress of human thought as they stood together beneath the dim glow of dawn that broke over battered shield towers. Civilians, soldiers, artists, and scientists gathered in every city square, their faces lit by screens showing freed Phylaxi and Zenari ships sending beams of solidarity from distant worlds. They wept and cheered and embraced, believing at last that the smallest flame of will could set an empire ablaze above them. The Council on Cepheus Prime sat in stunned silence, their centuries of conquest undone by the one species they could not bend on the planet below. Survivors built a crystal spire at the site of the first shield reactor. They wove steel and glass with symbols from the ancient caves and called it the Beacon of Minds. It pulsed each day, not as a threat, but as an invitation to any who sought freedom to join the song. And when night fell across Earth's blue surface, stars glimmered brighter, as if the galaxy itself had awakened to a new dawn. Then the survivors founded the Mind University. Beneath the beacon, scholars from every freed world studied, their learning to heal psychic wounds and share the human echo. They built libraries of memory, recorded in crystal and light. They taught children lullabies that carried echoes of past battles and dreams of future hope. Liberated species came to learn and to teach the art of collective dreaming in halls of glass and gardens of living sound, and the Whisperer became a legend carved on monuments and taught in every history class as a warning of what control can never conquer the heart of a mind, united by choice and compassion. And as the Beacon of Minds sent its pulse across the void, every world listened and joined the chorus until the galaxy sang in unison for freedom. And in that song, every mind found its voice, and every voice became a shield. The end.